Welcome. Thank you for joining me. Grayboardgamer here, and today I'm doing a playthrough of Village Attacks by Grimlord Games. This is a Kickstarter that recently arrived at my home. I've been excited for this one, opened it up immediately, started doing some playthroughs, and wanted to do a series for you. So without further delay, let's get this box open and get it set up. The first step in the setup is sorting the pieces, and you can see here in the second sentence, it says, before shuffling the village event deck, remove the 4 troll cards and place them back in the box. For this playthrough, I'm going to use a lot of the optional rules. We will go ahead and use the troll, so we will ignore this step right now. Then we will choose our scenario. So we need to lay out the map tiles and place the villager spawn points, room tokens, and objective tokens. The scenario that I'll be doing in this playthrough is scenario number 8, Escalations. It's rated as a hard difficulty with a time of about 80 minutes, and it lists the tiles that are required to set it up. What we'll set the castle heart at, which is 12, and we'll set the village morale to start at 70. And then there's some more information here as to the tiers for the spawns and then the village event triggers. I'll get into more detail with them as we go through the gameplay. And it simply states our objective is to slay all the villagers. And that means we need to bring that village morale, which starts at 70, all the way down to 0. It does not say in the rulebook what slay all the villagers means exactly. So I posed the question on BGG, and Adam Smith of Grimlord Games answered me and let me know that slay all the villagers means to bring the village morale down to 0. Before we set up the map tiles, let's get the castle heart and village morale set. Here we're looking at the game overview tile, and this is where we'll keep track of that information during the gameplay. And it's stated in the scenario that we're going to set the castle heart to 12, and we'll do that here. We have various numbers. We're going to start it at just 10 and 2 for 12. It says to start the village morale at 70. So we'll go ahead and put that at 70. And that little skull is the 0 on that dial. And the village event, this dial will rotate, but we'll start it on the skull. The village event deck will go here, but we'll add that in just a little while. In order to set up the event deck, we need to add the troll back in. We have the 4 troll cards. That's these right here. We're going to shuffle them, remove 1 at random, keeping it face down. Then we'll shuffle the other 3 into the village event deck and place that on the game overview tile. Then we're going to take the top 2 cards from that event deck and shuffle that card that we took out into that, so we'll see the troll in one of the first 3 events that occur. I've done exactly as it's stated in those rules. The troll cards are now in the event deck, and we'll place them here on the game overview tile to create the event draw stack, and the discards will go there throughout the game. Here we can see the tile layout for scenario 8 Escalations. Here's what it's going to look like once we get them all in place, and then I give you a guide here with the tile codes to make it easier for you to put them in place. And you'll see here we have a yellow and then 2 red and a blue villager spawn point that we'll add on. And here we have 2 tokens that tell you that those 2 rooms have special conditions, and I'll go over those once I get it set up. Here you can see the layout. All the tiles are in place. We have our red and blue spawn point here on the far right, another red spawn point here, and the yellow one over here. Here we can see the room condition token on the right, and then a token for the condition that it creates as a reminder to me. Here's a close-up view of the room condition token, and then the condition token itself. In this case, it is burn. That token there means that if a monster were to end their turn in this zone, which is that tile right there, that is the graveyard. If one of my monsters ends its turn there, they will take 1 damage and are inflicted with the burn condition. Down here, we have a room condition and a token, and you can see those up close. Here we have the silence token. This room here is the chapel. So if a monster just enters this zone or the chapel, they're inflicted with silence, even if they just go in there. Burn occurs if they end their turn in there, so they can safely pass through there, but here they're inflicted with silence if they just enter that zone. Each scenario in the book is designed to be played with 3 monsters. You can decrease that number or increase it, and there's ways to do that in the rule book. How to change the difficulty according to how many monsters you do or don't have. And I'll show you how that works because I'm going to do this as a 4-player playthrough. No matter how many monsters you're playing with, there can only be 1 guardian, 1 decimator, and then the rest have to be support type monsters. This here with the shield, that is the guardian symbol. I only have 2 guardians to choose from. I believe this came with the base game, and this is from the Kickstarter exclusive expansion, I believe. So since we can only have 1 of these, and I'm going to choose everything at random, we're going to roll a dice and see which one is going to be part of our group. The Dullahan, and I don't know if I'm saying that right, will be 1, 2, or 3, and the Revenant will be 4, 5, and 6 on a 6-sided die. Looks like we're using the Revenant. Let's take a quick look at our Guardian class. The Revenant is of the undead type. In order for the Revenant to upgrade his abilities, he needs to get to the 6 experience point mark, and he has 8 health. He starts the game with this ability, the Returned. It says that the Castle Heart suffers just 1 damage when you resurrect. Whenever a monster is slain, they're taken off the board, and then on the next turn they reappear in the Castle Heart and cause the Castle Heart 2 damage. But in the case of the Revenant, he will only cause 1 damage when he resurrects with that initial ability, and he can upgrade that later. And a lot of this will make sense throughout the course of the gameplay, but I'm just going to go over their boards briefly as we select them. And he has 2 in each slot, 2 defense, 2 reserve, and 2 movement. Next we will choose our Decimator. That's what this 4-pointed star-like symbol is in the upper left corner. The Voidyanoi does not have that symbol, and I confirmed that with Mr. Smith from Grimlord Games that is a printing error that they're working on resolving, but he let me know that the Voidyanoi is a Decimator class. Again, we're going to pick randomly. We have 4 to choose from, and we'll go with 1, 2, 3, and 4. We'll roll a 4-sided die, get a 4, which means we're going to use this monster down here, the Gleistig. The Gleistig is our Decimator class. It is a cursed type creature. As with the Revenant, it takes 6 experience to level up an ability or get a new ability, and begins the game with 7 health. The Gleistig is pretty quick because it has 3 slots for movement, 2 reserve, and only 1 defense. The ability it starts with is the Piercing Bolt, and it says your first, and that's the ranged attack symbol. Your first ranged attack also deals damage to a zone adjacent to the target zone, not including your zone. So whenever I use a ranged attack, I can attack a zone adjacent to that one, but not the one I'm in. And this symbol down here in the bottom left, it's an eye with a slash through it. It means I do not need line of sight in order to use that special ability. I need line of sight for my initial ranged attack, but the one that's going to go into the adjacent zone does not need line of sight. Next we have our support type monsters, and I'm going to choose 2 since I'm doing a 4-player game. Again, I apologize if I'm getting these names pronounced wrong, but the 6 that we have to choose from, we have Baba Yaga, the Leshy, Vampire, the Baycock, the Succubus, and the Wendigo. I believe the base game comes with 5 monsters total, 1 from each type. I went ahead and mixed in all of the expansions that I got from my Kickstarter fulfillment. And in that case, the Rage and Avarice, Wrath and Ruin, and Despair and Aberrance. I have those 3 expansions, so I have those monsters mixed in here. This is another one where they had a printing error. The Baba Yaga monster does not have the support symbol on it, but I asked about that and found out that that is a support type monster. This time when I roll though, I'm going to take away the vampire and the Wendigo because they are both of the cursed type creature, and we already have one cursed type creature, the Glostig. It's not against the rules to have multiples of the same type, but I want to show you as much of the game as possible. So I'm going to remove those two, and now I'm going to roll a 4-sided die, 1, 2, 3, 4, to select 2 of these, and I'm only going to pick one of the demon type. So if I roll demon first, I'm going to move the other one out so we don't get 2 of the same type. Our first support monster will be 4, which will be the succubus. So we will remove the baycock, which means the succubus is now part of the group, and we'll go over her card here in just a moment. We'll finish up now by selecting our 4th and final monster, which will either be of the arcane class or the mythic class. And we'll have Baba Yaga be 1 and 2, and the Leshy be 3 and 4. We will have the Leshy. First we have the succubus of the demon class. She needs 5 experience to level up and has 6 health points. She can defend with 1. She has a large reserve of 3 and can move 2. Her beginning power is seduction. The first, and that is a villager activation symbol, that I resolve may instead activate a villager within range. And the range is here in the top left, either 0, which is on the same zone, or up to 2 zones away. And again, this one does not need line of sight. And our final monster is the Leshy of the mythic type. Needs 6 experience to level up, has 9 health, really heavy in defense, has 3 slots, 1 reserve, and 2 movement. The beginning ability of the Leshy says any defense, and that's the defense symbol, used by you in defense also deals 1 damage to the attacker. Unlike the other abilities we've seen, this one actually has an activation requirement, which is the magic symbol. So we'd have to place a magic die there in order for this to be active with the defense symbol. The monster boards will remain down here at the bottom of the screen. Most of the time you won't see them whenever we're looking at the castle itself, but I'll definitely focus on each one as we're taking actions on them. The game came with this metal first player coin that it asks you to flip. This would be heads and this would be tails. Whenever we come to a point where it asks us to flip the coin, we'll just roll a 6-sided die and use 1, 2, and 3 for heads and 4, 5, or 6 for tails. That way we don't have to drop this metal coin and make a bunch of noise. This is the first player token. Normally the players would agree who the first player is, but you know me and random, so I'll roll a 4-sided to determine the first player. And it'll be number 1, the Revenant. The Revenant will receive the first player token, and that'll rotate at the end of each round. Next we would select the type tokens that are going to go into our type draw bag for the game, and we grab each of the type of monster that we have. We have an undead, a cursed, a demon, and a mythic. We do not have an arcane monster, so this token will not go in the bag. The remaining tokens are in the bag and they'll be drawn when appropriate. Next we would create our town hero deck, and we have 2 mythic heroes, 2 arcane, 2 undead, 3 demon, and 3 cursed. The game calls for you to create a deck of 5, which would be 1 of each, but it says you can have a larger deck if you want to, but it has to be evenly distributed. So since I only have 2 mythic, arcane, and undead, I'm only going to take 2 of the demon and 2 of the cursed to make the town hero deck, and that'll make it a deck of 10 to give us more variety, which means we need to pick randomly which one is going to come out and not be used from the demon and cursed town heroes. And I have them stacked up here 3 high, and we'll roll a 6-sided die, and we'll go 1 and 2 on the top, 3 and 4 in the middle, 5 and 6 on the bottom. And we rolled 5, which would be the bottom, which means the executioner will not be part of this game. And in the cursed town heroes, a 5, which would be the bottom again, the jailer will not be part of this game. The remaining 10 town heroes will be shuffled, and these are thick cardboard tokens, they're not cards. Shuffle them a few more times, and then we'll place them in these card holders up here to create our town hero draw deck. Then we will create the draw decks for the villager spawn cards and the trap cards. The villager spawn cards are here. And they lay out exactly what type of villager, whether it's going to be a peasant, a hunter, or a town hero that spawns when drawn. We'll give that a good mix. Give it another couple shuffles, and then we'll place it in the card holder, and it's ready for use. And now we'll do the same with the traps. There are 10 different kinds of traps in the game, and there's 2 of each card here, so we'll give that a good shuffle. Another quick mix, and place it in the card holder, and it'll be ready to be our draw deck for traps. And I'll use the empty spaces next to each one as the discard pile. Now I know everything's a little busy here, but I'm trying to keep everything as compact as possible to make it a little bit easier to see what's going on throughout the game. At the beginning of the game, you're going to draw one of the trap cards and place it over here under the game overview tile. The first trap that'll be available for purchase will be the swinging blades, and this symbol at the top is what is needed to purchase that. That's the melee attack symbol, and I'll explain this in further detail if I make a purchase or if I'm thinking about it to let you know my reasoning. And we'll place that here in the first slot on the game overview tile available for purchase. You'll also notice these dice. These did not come with the game. I used those as a reminder. The village morale starts at 70, but the next village morale event triggers at 55, so I used those percentage dice to remind me. Same with the village event here. The first village event triggers at 2, so I'm using that 20-sided die as a reminder to me. The scenario escalations, the village spawn tiers work differently than they normally do. Here we're going to read in the special conditions. The scenario begins with just villager spawn point active and spawning at tier 3. When tier 2 begins, the blue villager spawn point becomes active. When tier 1 is triggered, both red villager spawn points activate. All town hero spawn cards spawn a town hero. I'll explain the difference of that when we see one. And whenever a town hero spawn card is drawn during tier 3, we draw an additional spawn card and spawn both the town hero and the additional villagers at that spawn point. Max 1 additional card per spawn. At the beginning of the game, only this yellow spawn point is active and spawning at tier 3. When the village morale gets down to 55, we'll trigger the next spawn point, which will be this blue one over here, and then the yellow and the blue would both be active, but we would be spawning at tier 2 instead of 3. And then at the next morale event, it'll activate this red one here and that one there, and all 4 spawn points will then be active, but spawning at tier 1. And what do the tiers mean? I'll show you. We'll go ahead and spawn the beginning villagers here for this zone. So I'll draw, and we're going to get hunters. That's what this symbol is here, and they're much more dangerous than the peasants because they actually have ranged attacks. These are the tiers here, 1, 2, and 3. You can see at the beginning of the game, tier 3, we're going to have a lot more enemies. So our goal is to knock that morale down and get these tiers to drop. Normally in a game, you start at 1 and it gets harder as you go. Here we start difficult and then get easier, but we're adding in more spawn points throughout the game. So we're going to spawn 7 hunters. In order to spawn 7 hunters, we're going to draw a hunter type from the bag. We're going to mix this up, draw a token out, and it is the yellow, so that means we're going to spawn demon hunters. We'll keep that spawn token out for now because you can only have 5 of any single type of hunter out there. So the first 5 are all going to be demon hunters. We'll go ahead and spawn our 5 demon hunters. The sculpts don't mean anything other than variety. So there are 3 different sculpts. So I'll go ahead and use 3 different ones to get our first 5 hunters out. You can see we have our 5 demon hunters. They have the yellow clip-on bases. The game comes with several clip-on bases to make it easy to identify the hunters and what type they are. So we have our 5 yellow or 5 demon hunters here in ST1 or the storeroom. We need to draw another type token to see what the remaining 2 hunters will be. Hunters are always spawned in groups. You don't draw a token for each single one. So that's why we did 5 right away. Next, the next 2 will be of the red or the mythic type. That token will go back in the bag since we're only spawning 2, and you can have up to 5 of any single type. Now we have all 7 of our hunters spawned, but there's actually going to be one more. Because if we look here on player difficulty adjustments, if we're using 4 monsters, it's going to be +1 to villager spawns. So instead of 7 hunters, we're going to have 8. And since we drew mythic, we'll add one more red mythic hunter. Now we have our 8th and final hunter, and you can see they take up most of the tile. The rules state that as long as 50% or more of the base is on the tile, then that's okay. If at any time you go to add a mini, whether it's another villager, a town hero, one of the monsters moves in, or the troll, and you cannot fit them on with at least 50% of their base, then there's a rule called heaving, where villagers will be pushed out of the room to accommodate it. And usually they're pushed closer to the castle heart, with some exceptions. When that happens, we'll go ahead and go over it. Also, I'm going to add in another optional rule because I want to show you as much as possible. We're going to do the day and night mode. And it says for those seeking an even greater challenge, sure, why not? So we're going to use the day and the night die, which will replace one of the 6 normal die depending on whether it's night or day. And it says here the night die allows monsters to play more aggressively because it has 3 melee attack and 3 ranged attack symbols on it only. And the day die has 2 blank faces and 4 faces with the activate villager symbol. The blank faces are unusable, but the activate villager symbol allows them to move a little closer. And here's one of the normal die that those will replace. We have a defense, ranged, activate villager, magic, retaliate, and melee attack. One of each of the 6 symbols, and that's on all 6 of the regular dice. And here we have the day and then the night die that we're going to use in place to make the game a little more interesting. And there's some special effects that occur whether it's day or night. Instead of going over all of them right now, I'll go ahead and just talk about them in the context of the game. Basically, it boils down to monsters being stronger at night and weaker during the day. And here's the token for day or night. We'll go ahead and roll a 6-sided die to see if we start the game in the day or night cycle. Day will be 1, 2, 3. Night will be 4, 5, 6. We're going to start in the night, which means we'll get rid of one of our regular dice and add the night die in. At the end of each game round, we'll flip that over each time. That way the day and the night alternate back and forth. But for now, we're starting off in the evening. Our 4 monsters will start here in the castle heart. We have the Revenant. We also have the clip-on base for them to make it easier to identify. The Gleistig with the blue base. Succubus with the yellow base. And the Leshy with the red base. They're all in place now in the castle heart and ready to begin. My game is set up and ready to begin. Again, I'm using several of the optional rules. You don't have to, in order to make it a little bit easier when you're learning the game. You don't have to use the day-night cycle. You could use 3 monsters so you don't have to add or subtract villagers from your spawns. And I'm also going to use the troll. So when it comes into play in one of these first 3 village events, we'll see the huge mini for the troll, and we'll go over the rules for troll operates. We are ready to begin, starting with the Revenant here at night.